Commander Eva Rostova closed her eyes, feeling the familiar throb of a tension headache building behind her temples. 17 hours of negotiations with the Cathar delegation had left her mentally drained and physically exhausted. The stakes couldn't be higher. Earth desperately needed the rare minerals only found in abundance on Catharian territories, and this deep space mission represented humanity's last best hope for securing a stable supply chain. Eva massaged her temples as she reviewed her notes in the privacy of her cabin aboard the diplomatic vessel. The Cathar were notoriously difficult negotiation partners, a feline-like species with rigid social structures and an almost pathological devotion to logical consistency. Their stern, unyielding demeanor made human diplomats seem positively frivolous by comparison. Yet somehow, Eva had managed to navigate the complex web of Catharian protocols to bring them to the brink of a historic treaty. Just one more formal assessment remained before the signing ceremony tomorrow. A biological resonance evaluation, they called it. Eva wasn't entirely clear on the details, but her briefing materials suggested it was a standard Catharian procedure for final verification of compatible negotiating partners. Nothing to worry about. The soft chime of her cabin door interrupted her thoughts. "Enter," she called, expecting her human aid. Instead, the door slid open to reveal a tall, slender Cathar. Eva immediately recognized Xyler, the biological liaison assigned to the treaty proceedings. Unlike most Cathar, whose fur displayed variations of gold and brown patterns, Xyler's coat featured unusual swirling patterns that resembled distant nebulae, set against a backdrop of midnight blue. But most striking were those eyes, large, emerald green, with vertical pupils that seemed to dilate slightly as they took in Eva's surprised expression. Eva quickly stood, smoothing her uniform. "Liaison Xyler, I wasn't expecting you. Our final session isn't scheduled until tomorrow." Xyler's posture remained perfectly straight, tail motionless, a sign of formal intent among the Cathar. "Commander Rostova, I apologize for the unscheduled intrusion. The High Council has requested that I complete the biological resonance evaluation before the night cycle. It would be optimal if we could proceed now." Eva frowned. "Here? In my private quarters? I understood this would take place in the formal meeting chambers. The procedure requires a certain intimacy that would be compromised in public spaces," Xyler replied, ears flicking slightly, the smallest betrayal of what might be discomfort in a Cathar. "It involves direct neural resonance calibration, which necessitates physical contact and access to recent emotional memories." Eva took an involuntary step back. "Physical contact? Memory access? That wasn't in my briefing materials. I assure you, the procedure is minimally invasive," Xyler said, moving further into the room with fluid grace. The door slid closed behind her. "It is merely a final verification of emotional stability and long-term cooperative potential. The Cathar value predictable partners." Green eyes fixed on Eva's unblinking. "Relax, human. This won't hurt." Xyler's voice softened almost imperceptibly before starting the procedure. Eva's diplomatic training kicked in, overriding her instinctual resistance. Refusing now could jeopardize months of delicate negotiations. Yet every military protocol she'd ever learned screamed against allowing an alien species direct access to her mind. "I need to understand exactly what this entails," Eva said firmly. "What kind of memories will you access? How deep does this connection go? Will you be able to extract classified information?" Xyler's ear tips twitched, a sign of mild impatience, Eva had learned. "I seek only emotional resonance patterns, not specific tactical or classified data. The connection allows me to sense your general emotional stability, honesty of intent, and cooperative capacity. Without this assessment, the High Council will not authorize the final treaty signatures." Eva considered her options. Refusing meant failure. Months of work wasted. Earth's resource crisis continuing unabated. With a deep breath, she made her decision. "Very well," she said, "but I have conditions. Minimal data access. Full explanation of the procedure as it happens. An immediate termination if I request it. Acceptable terms," Xyler replied with a slight bow of acknowledgement. Please sit. Relaxation optimizes the resonance clarity. Eva settled into her desk chair, hands gripping the armrests with perhaps more force than necessary. Xyler moved behind her with silent grace, and Eva fought the urge to turn and watch. I will place my hands at your temples, Xyler explained, voice low and even. You may experience unusual sensations as our neural patterns align. Some humans describe it as similar to the moment before sleep, when thoughts become fluid and boundaries less distinct. Eva nodded stiffly, then felt the light pressure of Xyler's hands. Warm, slightly furred, with a hint of retracted claws barely perceptible against her skin. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, colors, sounds, impressions flooding in too fast to process. Alien landscapes with twin moons hanging low in purple skies. The sensation of fur rippling in a warm breeze. Complex mathematical patterns spiraling and connecting in ways that made perfect, beautiful sense for just a heartbeat before slipping away again. And beneath it all, a surprising undercurrent of curiosity? Not the cold, analytical assessment Eva had expected, but something warmer, more genuine, a desire to understand. The connection lasted perhaps 30 seconds before Xyler gently withdrew, both physically and mentally, stepping back with perfect composure. Eva found herself gasping slightly, her heart racing as though she'd sprinted a kilometer. The assessment is complete, Xyler announced, voice returning to its typical formal cadence. The results will be processed and presented to the High Council before tomorrow's ceremony. Eva touched her temples, feeling no physical difference, yet somehow altered all the same. That was unexpected. Indeed, Xyler replied, and for just a moment, Eva thought she detected a note of surprise in the Kthar's voice. Rest well, Commander. Tomorrow will be historically significant for both our species. Xyler departed with the same silent grace with which she had arrived, leaving Eva alone with a strange, lingering sense of presence in her mind, like the phantom sensation of music heard hours ago, still echoing in memory. The procedure had not heard as promised, but as Eva prepared for sleep, she couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had changed, something beyond treaties and negotiations, something neither human nor Kthar protocols had prepared her for. Eva woke the next morning with a strange sensation of dual awareness, her own thoughts moving in their typical patterns alongside something else, a subtle echo that processed the world with alien precision. She visited the ship's doctor, describing the lingering effects of the resonance procedure. Physically, you're perfectly normal, Dr. Nadia Petrov assured her after running a comprehensive neural scan. The older woman's weathered face creased with concern despite her reassuring words. But I don't like unknown alien influences on my crew, Commander, especially not in their brains. It's fading, Eva lied, unwilling to admit that the echoes seemed to be growing clearer rather than dissipating. Just monitor it discreetly. We can't afford complications now. The treaty signing proceeded with the ceremonial precision the Kthar valued so highly. Eva maintained her diplomatic smile throughout, even as she felt Xyler's presence on the periphery of her awareness like a ghost in the corner of her vision. The surprise came afterward, when High Counselor Vexer approached Eva with Xyler in tow. Commander Rostova, the elderly Kthar intoned, his once golden fur now faded to pale cream with age. Based on the exceptional resonance evaluation results, the Council has approved an extended cultural exchange initiative beyond our resource treaty. Liaison Xyler has been assigned as your primary contact for this expanded mission. Eva managed to hide her shock behind a diplomatic smile. I'm honored by the Council's confidence, she replied smoothly, even as her mind raced. Exceptional results? What exactly had Xyler sensed or done during that connection? Xyler's expression remained impassive, but Eva felt a flicker of something across their newfound connection. Anticipation? Concern? It was gone before she could identify it. The following weeks established a new routine. Each morning, Eva and Xyler would meet in a designated cultural exchange chamber aboard the Earth vessel. What began as formal discussions about governance structures and resource management protocols gradually expanded into broader cultural territories. Your concept of the weave is fascinating, Eva commented during their fourth session, referring to the Ctharian collective mental harmony that bound their society together. It seems almost spiritual despite your species' logical foundations. Xyler's tail twitched slightly, a sign Eva had come to recognize as thoughtful consideration. The weave is neither mystical nor illogical. It is a quantifiable neural resonance network that allows for efficient societal functioning by minimizing emotional disruptions and maintaining collective harmony. So, emotions are seen as disruptive? Eva asked. Strong individual emotions create resonance distortions that can propagate through the weave, Xyler explained. Our social structures have evolved to dampen such disruptions for the greater benefit. Eva pondered this. But doesn't that limit individuality? Creativity? Xyler remained silent for several seconds longer than was typical. That is a complex query with multiple analytical branches. Something in Xyler's hesitation caught Eva's attention. Through their lingering connection, she sensed not disagreement, but genuine uncertainty, as if Xyler had privately considered this very question. Their sessions continued, gradually shifting from formal exchanges to something approaching genuine conversation. Eva found herself explaining concepts like intuition, artistic expression, and the value humans placed on emotional connections. To her surprise, Xyler seemed particularly interested in human music. The patterns are mathematically complex, yet emotionally resonant, Xyler observed after listening to a Bach concerto. There is a harmony that reminds me of the weave, yet it embraces rather than suppresses emotional response. During their 8th session, Xyler asked the question Eva had been expecting for days. When our minds connected during the resonance assessment, I accessed several of your memory engrams. There was one. Xyler's ears flattened slightly, a rare display of uncertainty, involving water falling from great heights into a natural basin. You were a juvenile. The emotional resonance was unusual. Eva smiled, surprised by the specific memory Xyler had extracted. My first visit to Niagara Falls when I was 7. That sense of wonder mixed with fear, the raw power of nature. It made me feel small in the best possible way. Small, in a positive context. Xyler's head tilted slightly. This is conceptually challenging. Sometimes being reminded of your insignificance is freeing, Eva tried to explain. It puts your problems in perspective. As she spoke, Eva felt a strange harmonization through their connection, as if their thoughts were temporarily aligning despite their differences. For just a moment, she could perceive the world through Xyler's consciousness, a reality organized by precise patterns, where emotions were classified and regulated rather than experienced as flowing currents. Xyler blinked rapidly, suggesting the experience had been mutual. Your mind processes reality in fascinating patterns, Commander. The mental echo grew stronger with each interaction. Eva began anticipating Xyler's thoughts before they were voiced. Xyler demonstrated an uncanny ability to sense Eva's emotional states despite the Cthar's supposed difficulty with human expressions. Their unexpected synchronicity proved valuable when the environmental systems on the diplomatic vessel malfunctioned, threatening both human and Cthar comfort parameters. While the engineering teams struggled with contradictory diagnostic results, Eva and Xyler collaborated on a solution, her intuitive problem-solving complementing Xyler's systematic approach. How did you determine that the secondary ventilation system was causing the harmonic disruption? Chief Engineer Takeda asked Eva afterward. That wouldn't have shown up on any standard diagnostic. Eva hesitated, unable to explain that she'd somehow borrowed Xyler's ability to perceive patterns in complex systems, while Xyler had simultaneously adopted her human knack for intuitive leaps. Good teamwork, she said instead, catching Xyler's eye across the room. The Cthar gave the barest nod of acknowledgement, but through their connection, Eva sensed a growing disquiet beneath Xyler's composed exterior. The next morning, Xyler failed to appear for their scheduled session. Eva waited 30 minutes, unprecedented tardiness for Kthar, before seeking out her liaison in the Kthar delegation's quarters. She found Xyler alone in her private chamber, standing perfectly still before a viewport that looked out into the void of space. Even without seeing the Kthar's face, Eva could sense the turmoil roiling beneath the surface. "Something's wrong," Eva said. It wasn't a question. Xyler's ears flattened against her skull. "You should not be here, Commander." "Yet here I am," Eva replied, stepping closer. "And something's clearly troubling you. I can feel it." "What you feel is impossible according to Ktharian understanding," Xyler said without turning. "The resonance assessment should have faded days ago. The continuing connection between us is unprecedented." Eva moved to stand beside Xyler, looking out at the stars. "Then help me understand what's happening." Xyler remained silent, so long that Eva wondered if she would answer at all. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer than Eva had ever heard it. "My species is facing an existential threat we call resonance decay," Xyler said. "The neural network that creates the weave is deteriorating across multiple generations. Connections weaken. Patterns destabilize. In the most severe cases, individuals become completely disconnected. We call them the unwoven. They lose all sense of collective harmony and purpose." "Like a social disorder?" Eva asked. "It is both more and less than that," Xyler replied. "The unwoven retain their logical faculties and memories, but lose the essential connection that makes them Ktharian. It is a form of living death to my people." Eva processed this revelation. "And this relates to our connection how?" Xyler finally turned, emerald eyes meeting Eva's. The true purpose of the resonance assessment was not merely diplomatic evaluation. It was an experiment to determine if human neural patterns could temporarily stabilize our deteriorating resonance without suffering harm themselves. Eva stiffened. "You used me as a test subject without consent?" "Yes," Xyler admitted without attempting justification. "It was logically necessary for the survival of my species, but—" Her ears lowered further. "I now find myself experiencing a cognitive dissonance about this decision that suggests I have been influenced by your human ethical frameworks." The admission caused Eva's anger to fade as quickly as it had flared. Through their connection, she could sense Xyler's genuine remorse, an emotion that would be considered dangerous weakness in Ktharian society. "There's more," Eva said, sensing the undercurrent of deeper fear. "This is personal for you, isn't it?" Xyler's tail wrapped tightly around her leg, a self-comforting gesture Eva had never observed in any Kthar before. "My lineage shows advanced signs of resonance decay. My connection to the weave weakens with each passing cycle. Without intervention, I will become unwoven within 5 years." Xyler's voice remained controlled, but Eva felt the devastating fear behind the words. "What I did not anticipate was that our resonance would create a stable hybrid pattern rather than a temporary alignment. You and I are becoming something unprecedented, Commander." Eva took a moment to absorb this. "And I'm guessing this hybrid pattern violates some Ktharian protocol?" "It violates all of them," Xyler replied with unexpected bluntness. "There's a faction among my people, the pure weave, who believe any external influence on our neural patterns will hasten rather than halt the decay. They advocate for genetic purification and the exile of all showing signs of decay, including myself, if they discover the extent of our connection." The threat remained unspoken, but clear. Eva reached out instinctively, placing her hand on Xyler's arm, the first voluntary physical contact she had initiated. Through their connection flowed reassurance, determination, and something else neither of them was ready to name. "Then we'll just have to be careful," Eva said firmly. Careful, as it turned out, wasn't enough. Within days, subtle signs of monitoring appeared. Ktharian officials who had previously been cordial grew distant with Eva. Security clearances for joint facilities were revoked with vague, administrative explanations. Xyler was called to increasingly frequent reharmonization sessions with Ktharian resident specialists. The breaking point came when Eva was denied access to the Treaty Implementation Committee without explanation, effectively sidelining her from the very agreement she had negotiated. "They're isolating us," Eva told Xyler during a surreptitious meeting in a maintenance corridor. "And that's never a good sign in interspecies relations." Xyler's tail lashed with uncharacteristic agitation. "The Pure Weave faction has gained influence with the High Council. They're spreading misinformation about human neural patterns causing accelerated decay. There's even talk of voiding the treaty entirely. They can't just—" Eva began, then stopped as she caught unusual movement in the corridor junction ahead. "We're being watched." They managed to separate without incident. But the next morning, Eva found herself summoned to an emergency diplomatic session. Ambassador Harrison, Earth's senior representative, met her at the entrance to the conference chamber, his normally affable expression replaced with stern concern. "There's been an incident, Commander," he said quietly. 6 Ctharian technicians have reported symptoms consistent with early resonance decay after working alongside human engineers. They're claiming our neural patterns are contagious. Eva's heart sank. "That's biologically impossible based on everything we know." "I'm aware," Harrison replied grimly. "But the Pure Weave faction is using these reports to push for immediate quarantine protocols and treaty suspension. They're specifically naming you as the primary vector, claiming your extended contact with Liaison Xyler is the source." "And Xyler?" Eva asked, fighting to keep her voice neutral despite the concern flooding through her. "Detained for protective isolation," Harrison said. "This is rapidly becoming a diplomatic crisis, Commander. I need to know what's really going on between you and the Ctharian liaison." Eva took a deep breath. "It's complicated, sir. And if I told you the full truth, you'd probably have me confined to quarters for medical evaluation." Harrison studied her face for a long moment. "The Cthar are lying about something. If you and Liaison Xyler have information that could prevent an interspecies incident, now would be the time to share it." Eva made her decision. "I'll need access to Xyler, secure communications, and your word that you'll listen to the full explanation before taking action." Harrison nodded grimly. "You have one chance to fix this, Commander. Don't waste it." Securing Xyler's release required calling in every diplomatic favor Eva had accumulated over years of service. When they finally reunited in a secure conference room, Xyler appeared physically unharmed but mentally strained, her normally immaculate fur dull with stress. "The Pure Weave faction has moved more aggressively than anticipated," Xyler said without preamble. "They've falsified medical data to support their claims of human neural contamination." "Can we prove the falsification?" Eva asked. "Not without access to the affected technicians, who are being kept in isolation." Eva paced the small room. "Then we need a different approach. If we can't disprove their claims directly, we need to undermine their credibility by exposing their broader agenda." Through their strengthening connection, they formulated a plan: locate historical evidence of previous resonance decay episodes and their resolutions, evidence the Pure Weave faction would have suppressed. But such records, if they existed, would be deeply buried in Ctharian archives with no access granted to humans. "There may be another source," Xyler said hesitantly. "There exists a group within Ctharian society that the Pure Weave considers aberrant. Artists, historians, and cultural preservationists who value individuality within the collective harmony. They maintain what they call memory sanctuaries, repositories of knowledge deemed disruptive to collective stability." "Would it help us?" Eva asked. "They're highly suspicious of outsiders," Xyler replied. "But my progenitor was associated with their circle before conforming to mainstream expectations. I may still have connection pathways." Their search led them to the lower levels of the Ctharian vessel, areas deliberately designed to appear utilitarian and insignificant. Xyler led Eva through increasingly narrow corridors until they reached an unmarked door. "Allow me to establish contact first," Xyler said. "Their reaction to a human presence may be unpredictable." Eva waited in the corridor while Xyler entered. Minutes stretched into nearly an hour before the door finally opened again. Xyler emerged with another Cthar, older, with silver-streaked fur and unusual decorative patterns dyed into the fur around their face. "This is Kethril," Xyler introduced them, "a keeper of memories." The elderly Kthar studied Eva with undisguised curiosity. "So this is your resonance partner," they said, circling Eva with an evaluative gaze. "Fascinating patterns. Come inside, both of you. What you seek is indeed within our keeping, though sharing it carries significant risk." The inner chamber revealed a startling contrast to typical Ktharian aesthetics, where most of their spaces featured mathematical precision and functional minimalism. This room exploded with color, texture, and apparent disorder. Walls displayed flowing artistic patterns. Objects of various materials and shapes filled open shelves. Most surprising were the physical books, actual paper bound with thread, technology humans had largely abandoned centuries ago. Before electronic records could be easily altered, we preserved knowledge this way, Kethril explained, removing an ancient volume from a climate control cabinet. What the Pure Weave calls contamination, our ancestors once called renewal. The volume contained detailed accounts of previous resonance decay episodes throughout Ktharian history, and more importantly, documented successful interventions through controlled interaction with other sentient species. The records described a delicate balance. Too little external influence left the decay untreated, while too much risked disrupting the weave's fundamental patterns. "This validates our approach," Xyler said excitedly, the most emotion Eva had ever heard in her voice. "Our resonance hybrid isn't an aberration. It's a solution that's worked before, but not an easy one to implement," Kethril cautioned. The Pure Weave gained power precisely because the earlier treatments were challenging to regulate. They promised security through isolation instead. As they studied the historical records, Eva felt the connection between herself and Xyler strengthening further, as if the shared knowledge was creating new resonance patterns between them. When their eyes met across the table, something shifted in their connection, deepening, clarifying. Without conscious decision, Eva reached for Xyler's hand. The moment their fingers intertwined, the resonance between them surged into something entirely new, a complete neural synchronization that maintained both their individual consciousnesses while creating something greater than either alone. For endless seconds, Eva experienced the world through dual perception, human emotion flowing through Ktharian logical frameworks, Ktharian pattern recognition enhanced by human intuitive leaps. It was neither human nor Kthar, but a genuinely new form of consciousness. When the intensity finally ebbed, Eva found herself leaning against Xyler for support, both of them breathing heavily. Kethril watched them with wide eyes. "By the ancient harmonies," the elder Kthar whispered, "you've achieved resonance fusion. The texts speak of this, but it hasn't been documented in 20 generations. What just happened?" Eva asked, her voice unsteady. "You've created a stable hybrid resonance pattern," Kethril explained. "A neural bridge between species that amplifies rather than dilutes both patterns. This is what the Pure Weave truly fears. Not contamination, but evolution they cannot control." With Kethril's guidance, they continued searching through the preserved records, eventually discovering something even more damning. Evidence that the current leaders of the Pure Weave faction had deliberately suppressed promising treatment protocols for resonance decay, preferring to maintain power through fear rather than pursue actual solutions. "This goes beyond factional politics," Xyler said grimly. "This is willful endangerment of our entire species." Armed with both historical precedent and evidence of malicious suppression, they formulated a plan to confront the Pure Weave faction publicly. The opportunity came sooner than expected when the High Council called an emergency session regarding the alleged human contamination and the future of the treaty. Eva and Xyler entered the council chamber together, facing the assembled Ktharian leadership and the Earth diplomatic contingent with united purpose. Ambassador Harrison gave Eva a questioning look, but remained silent as she took her position at the speaker's platform. "Honored Council," Eva began, "serious allegations have been made regarding human neural influence on Ktharian resonance patterns. These claims deserve thorough examination. based on historical fact rather than fear. Her statement caused immediate murmuring among the Kthar, who rarely interrupted formal proceedings. High Counselor Vexer raised a hand for silence. Commander Rostova, you have been named as the primary source of disruptive influence. Your presence here is permitted only to respond to these charges, not to direct proceedings. With respect, Counselor, Eva replied, I am here to provide evidence relevant to these proceedings, evidence that has been deliberately withheld from this council. Before further objections could be raised, Zyler stepped forward. I request formal recognition to present historical documentation regarding resonance decay treatment protocols spanning 20 generations of Ktharian history. A tall Kthar with striped gold and black fur rose from the Pure Weave delegation. This is procedurally inappropriate. Liaison Zyler has been compromised by prolonged human exposure and cannot be considered reliable. Then, perhaps, called Kethril from the chamber entrance. The council would prefer to hear from a memory keeper whose lineage predates the formation of the Pure Weave faction. The unexpected intervention caused a ripple of surprise through the assembled Kthar. Memory keepers were respected, but rarely participated in political proceedings. Let them speak, came a voice from the council table. Not Vexer, but an older female counselor whose support had been uncertain. I would hear this evidence. What followed was a systematic presentation of their discoveries. Historical records of previous decay episodes successfully treated through controlled interspecies neural interaction, documentation of the Pure Weave's deliberate suppression of this knowledge, and finally, analysis of the falsified medical data used to claim human contamination. Throughout their presentation, Eva felt opposition building among the Pure Weave faction, not just disagreement, but a dangerous rage that leaked through the Weave despite their attempts to suppress it. Through her connection with Zyler, she sensed the moment tension crystallized into intent. They're going to try to shut this down by force, she murmured to Zyler. As if on cue, the chamber's communication systems failed, plunging the room into semi-darkness. Security barriers activated at the exits, effectively trapping everyone inside. Emergency protocols engaged, announced the Pure Weave leader, rising to his feet. Biological containment procedure initiated due to detected neural contamination. Eva caught Ambassador Harrison's eye across the chamber, giving him a subtle signal they had arranged in advance. The human delegation immediately activated personal communication devices, independent of the Ktharian systems and still functional. What you're witnessing, Eva announced loudly, is not security protocol, but a coup attempt. The Pure Weave faction has no evidence of contamination, only fear of losing control. Chaos erupted as counselors demanded explanations and security personnel looked uncertainly between conflicting authority figures. Amidst the confusion, Zyler moved to a neural interface terminal still functioning on emergency power. What are you doing? Eva asked through their connection rather than aloud. Creating choice, Zyler replied, fingers flying across the control surface. Every Kthar deserves to know there's an alternative to isolation and fear. Understanding Zyler's intent, Eva positioned herself to block physical intervention from the nearest Pure Weave supporters. Through their connection, she felt Zyler accessing the Weave's local network, not to override existing patterns, but to introduce their hybrid resonance as an alternative frequency, available but not imposed. The effect rippled through the chamber as Kthar after Kthar paused, heads tilting as if listening to a distant melody. Some recoiled, but others, particularly those Eva had noted showing subtle signs of decay, seemed to relax, their neural patterns stabilizing as they voluntarily aligned with the new frequency. What have you done? Demanded the Pure Weave leader, his composure finally cracking. Offered truth, Zyler replied simply. The choice to evolve rather than decay. As the hybrid resonance pattern spread through the vessel's network, Ktharian security forces made their own choices, most stepping back from the Pure Weave leaders rather than enforcing their commands. Within minutes, the emergency protocols were reversed, communications restored, and the Pure Weave leadership facing their own accusations of attempted suppression. The aftermath unfolded over subsequent weeks. The treaty between Earth and the Cathar not only survived but strengthened, expanding beyond resource exchange to include controlled cultural and scientific cooperation. A new branch of Catharian society emerged. Those who embraced the hybrid resonance pattern became known as the evolving weave, neither rejecting Catharian collective harmony nor fearing external influences that might enhance it. For Eva and Xyler, the choice was never in question. Their unique bond made them natural ambassadors between worlds, pioneers of a new form of interspecies understanding that went beyond diplomatic protocols to genuine neural empathy. 6 months after the confrontation, they stood together in Eva's quarters, now expanded and modified to accommodate both human and Catharian preferences. Through the viewport, they watched the first joint scientific vessel prepare for departure, staffed by both species and dedicated to exploring the hybrid consciousness they had accidentally pioneered. "Did you ever imagine this outcome when you appeared in my quarters that night?" Eva asked, her fingers lightly entwined with Xyler's. "Logical probability calculations would have deemed it effectively zero," Xyler replied with the subtle humor she had developed through their connection. Eva smiled, turning to face her partner. Their resonance hummed between them, strong and stable. Neither fully human nor fully Cathar, but something new and continually evolving. "Ready for our procedure?" Eva asked with a playful echo of their first meeting, her hands moving to Xyler's temples. Xyler's emerald eyes gleamed with understanding. "I believe it is my turn to relax," she replied, leaning forward to initiate their daily resonance synchronization. As their minds joined once again, both thought the same thing simultaneously. What had begun as an invasion had become an invitation. What had been feared as contamination had become connection, and what neither species could have accomplished alone, they now created together, a harmony of difference that would ripple outward into the stars.